this episode, we're going to explain how supply chain attacks typically unfold and why the impact often spreads across partners and products in ways that surprise people. When you are new to incident response, you might assume an attack is a direct relationship between an attacker and one target organization, like a one-on-one confrontation. Supply chain attacks break that mental model because the attacker uses relationships between organizations or relationships between software components as the pathway in. That means the attacker is not just attacking you. They are attacking the trust connections you rely on to do business and to build technology. The aim of this lesson is to give you a clear storyline for supply chain attack methodology, meaning the steps attackers tend to follow, and to give you a clear way to describe impact, meaning who gets affected, how far it can spread, and why it can be hard to contain. By the end, you should be able to hear about a supply chain incident and quickly predict the likely next move and the likely downstream victims. The first stage in many supply chain attacks is target selection, but target selection looks different here than in a direct attack. Instead of asking which single company has the most valuable data, the attacker asks which upstream point can reach many downstream environments. A software vendor with a widely deployed product can become an amplifier because one compromised update mechanism can reach thousands of customers. A managed service provider can become an amplifier because one support platform can connect into many client networks. A popular dependency in a package ecosystem can become an amplifier because it is embedded in many applications through automated builds. This is a key methodology clue. The attacker is thinking in terms of leverage, meaning one compromise that creates many accesses. That is why supply chain attacks often feel like they appear everywhere at once, because the attacker chose a choke point that already has broad trust. Understanding that attacker logic helps you understand why these incidents are not random and why they are not just bigger versions of normal hacks. After selecting an amplifier target, the attacker's next stage is to compromise the upstream point in a way that preserves its legitimacy. In a vendor breach, that might mean accessing internal systems, support tooling, or administrative accounts that can touch customer environments. In dependency poisoning, it might mean compromising a maintainer account or a build pipeline that publishes packages so the attacker's code becomes part of a legitimate release. In trust abuse scenarios, it might mean stealing keys, certificates, or tokens so malicious actions look authorized and pass normal verification checks. A defining method in supply chain attacks is that the attacker tries to avoid tripping alarms by acting inside trusted processes. Instead of smashing through defenses, they slide into the workflow that already delivers updates, connects partners, or distributes code. This is why supply chain incidents can be hard to detect early. The system is doing what it normally does, but the content or the actor is wrong. The attacker's goal is to make the compromise blend into the rhythm of business. Once the upstream compromise exists, attackers often focus on weaponization, which is how they turn upstream access into downstream effect. For a software vendor, weaponization might involve inserting malicious code into an update, altering installers, or embedding backdoor behavior in a component that customers will deploy. For a service provider, it might involve using privileged access to log into client environments, run administrative actions, or extract data from systems the provider manages. For a dependency ecosystem, weaponization might involve publishing a new version that includes malicious code triggered by certain conditions, or that quietly contacts attacker-controlled infrastructure to receive commands. The weaponization stage is where the attack becomes more than access. It becomes capability. Capability can include data collection, remote command execution, creation of new accounts, or persistence mechanisms that survive reboot or updates. In supply chain cases, weaponization is often carefully designed to appear as normal software behavior, which is why it can remain unnoticed for longer than direct intrusion. Distribution is the stage where supply chain attacks differ most from normal attacks, because distribution happens through legitimate channels. Customers download updates, automated systems pull dependencies, and partner integrations exchange data every day. So the attacker's malicious content rides along that existing traffic. The attacker does not need to send suspicious messages or scan networks if the update channel delivers their payload for them. This distribution can happen quickly, such as when many systems auto-update overnight, or it can happen slowly, such as when different customers update on different schedules. The staggered timing makes impact harder to measure because some organizations may be affected immediately while others are not affected until weeks later. Another complication is partial adoption, where only certain products, versions, or configurations are impacted, which can create confusion in early reporting. In methodology terms, attackers often exploit that staggered distribution because it reduces the chance of a single loud detection event. Instead, the incident emerges as a pattern across multiple victims. Execution and persistence come next, and these stages describe what happens inside downstream environments after the malicious update, dependency, or partner access is used. Execution might be immediate, where the malicious code runs as soon as the software starts, or it might be delayed, where it waits for a trigger such as a specific date, a network condition, or a user action. Persistence might involve creating new accounts, planting new keys, modifying configuration, or enabling remote access features that allow the attacker to return. A key supply chain clue is that the malicious code may run with the permissions of the trusted software, which can be very powerful. For example, management software often has high privileges because it needs to manage systems, and that means a malicious update can inherit those privileges automatically. This is why supply chain attacks can become catastrophic. The attacker may gain privileged execution inside many environments with no need to break local defenses. The attacker's method is to piggyback on trusted privilege. Now let's talk about impact, because supply chain impact is not only about what happens to one organization, but about cascading risk across relationships. The first impact dimension is breadth, meaning how many downstream organizations are affected, which depends on how widely the compromised product or provider is used. The second dimension is depth, meaning how much control or access the attacker gains inside each downstream environment, which depends on the privilege level of the compromised pathway. The third dimension is duration, meaning how long the attacker can remain present and how long it takes to fully remove them, which depends on whether persistence was established and how difficult it is to identify all affected systems. These dimensions can vary widely, which is why two supply chain incidents with similar headlines can have very different real consequences. Some incidents cause data exposure without deep control, while others enable full remote control across many environments. When you describe impact, you should describe breadth, depth, and duration rather than using vague labels like massive or severe. Impact across partners is especially tricky because partner connections often involve ongoing access and ongoing data exchange. A partner may have a trusted link into your environment, or you may accept identity assertions from them, or you may exchange files and data through automated channels. If a partner is compromised, the attacker may use that partner's access to reach you, and your systems might treat the partner's traffic as legitimate. Even if the attacker does not reach your internal systems, they may access shared data that your partner stores or processes, and that exposure can still harm you. The downstream impact can also reverse direction. If you are compromised through a supply chain path, you might become the next upstream source of risk for your own customers and partners. That is why supply chain incidents often require coordinated communication and coordinated action among multiple organizations. The security problem is not contained by one boundary because the trust relationships cross boundaries by design. Impact across products is similarly complex because modern products are ecosystems, not single binaries. One product may include multiple components, multiple integrations, and multiple dependency layers, and some of those components may be shared across different product lines. A compromised dependency can therefore affect several products even if only one package name was poisoned. A compromised build pipeline can inject malicious code into multiple releases and multiple versions, creating a wide footprint that takes time to inventory. Even a single compromised update can produce different impacts depending on customer configurations, such as which modules are enabled and what permissions the software has in that environment. This product complexity is why supply chain incidents often start with uncertainty, because organizations must first figure out whether they use the affected product, then which versions they have, then whether the vulnerable component was actually present and active. Attackers benefit from that uncertainty because response slows while inventories are built. Understanding product layer complexity helps you see why early impact estimates are often wrong, and why response must include careful scoping rather than assumptions. Supply chain incidents also create a special type of secondary impact: loss of trust in normal operations. When an update channel is compromised, organizations may pause patching, which increases vulnerability elsewhere. When a dependency ecosystem is poisoned, development teams may freeze builds, slowing business delivery and sometimes encouraging unsafe shortcuts. When a vendor is breached, organizations may reduce integration and functionality to reduce exposure, which can degrade productivity. These operational impacts can be serious even when the direct technical compromise is limited. There can also be reputational impact, because customers and regulators may view supply chain compromise as a failure of due diligence, even if the immediate upstream breach was outside the organization's direct control. This is why supply chain resilience is partly about technical controls and partly about process and communication readiness. You are not only removing malware, you are restoring confidence in updates, dependencies, and partnerships. To explain supply chain methodology and impact clearly, it helps to practice telling the incident story as a chain rather than a single event. The attacker compromises an upstream amplifier, weaponizes that access into malicious content or privileged access, distributes it through legitimate channels, and then executes and persists inside downstream environments. The impact spreads across partners through trusted integrations and shared data flows, and it spreads across products through shared components, build pipelines, and dependency layers. Breadth, depth, and duration help you describe severity without exaggeration or vagueness. If you can describe that chain, you can also explain why containment often requires more than one organization to act, and why patching, key rotation, and access review may all be needed. Even for a beginner, this structured story turns supply chain attacks from a scary mystery into a set of predictable stages and consequences. That ability to describe the chain is what helps you make better response decisions and communicate clearly when supply chain trust has been broken.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.